most SMMA guys are idiots, and it's really not hard to compete against them if you have the right systems, because most of them don't even know what a system is. And if you want to scale, you need real systems, right? Like not a VA. A VA is not a system. I'm talking about like turning your business into a machine, like a system of systems that work on their own so that the driver can just like hit the gas, turn the wheel. Your business is a race car. You're the driver and you're the engineer. So you need to maximize the efficiency of every single part of your business so that you have the most leverage possible and so that you can be the most productive with the least amount of effort. Now, this is my calendar before I automated pretty much everything in my business. It was a nightmare. I was dying. It was not a very fun time or fun experience. And through adding systems, I was able to make my calendar look like this. Now, I'm specifically going to be talking about service delivery in this video. It wasn't just service delivery that changed my calendar from this to this. It was hiring a sales rep, it was hiring an appointment setter, and it was hiring an operations manager to get to this point. But I do really want to lean into the systems side and the service delivery side here, because I know a lot of people are wondering, like, how can you automate your service delivery and just like have it be so that you really hardly have to do anything, right? I know it's a really kind of weird thing. And the answer really is systems, right? And people, in my opinion, people severely underestimate the level of systemization required to scale an agency. Like a lot of people think it's just like, oh, you can, hire 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 people and then problem solved. But the reality is really just not that at all. People are not systems. They're not. People facilitate systems. People manage systems, or people perform the labor that is a part of a system, if that makes sense. So there are 2 main types of systems that I want to get into here. The first one is tangible systems. So these could be your high-level workflows, your zaps, your scripts, right? Things that you can actually, they could be on your computer, they could be a physical piece of paper, things that you can manipulate with your hands in some way, shape, or form. These are your tangible systems. So again, workflows, zaps, whatever. Now, before getting into intangible systems, there's something that I want to talk about here, right? When it comes to high-level workflows and zaps and so on and so forth, a lot of people will automate one cool little thing with a high-level workflow, or they'll automate one cool little thing with Zaps or Zapier. The problem with this is that the level to which, or the extent to which you can automate things just with these tangible systems is absurd. Like, it's not about just automatically sending an email. Like, what you want to do is, and this is why I say your business is a system of systems. Your business really is one massive assembly line for the customer's journey. Point A on the assembly line is when this person has never heard of you before. Point B on the assembly line is where the person has achieved the result that your product or service promises. There are so many steps in between, and you want to automate as many of these as you possibly can. The first one would be your lead generation method, to make them aware of who you are and make them interested in what you do, right? Then you have appointment setting, sales, onboarding, client maintenance, and client success up to get them to the point B, right? But like, think about all the tiny, minute little things that you do. There are so many. And just within the scripts category, you have an appointment setting script, but then you have your common objection handling scripts. You also have within your appointment setting system, you'll probably have texting scripts. It could be DM appointment setting scripts. It could be cold call scripts. It could be scripts for calling somebody who came in from a cold email versus somebody who came in from a paid ad. And all of these scripts are systems to approach these conversations. But you can also have scripts that are your onboarding script. You can have scripts that are just the little part after they say yes on a sales call. What do you say from here? We want to get down into the real nitty-gritty little parts of your business to make sure that you have controlled inputs, because controlled inputs yield controlled outputs. What you ideally want to do is just put someone through to the next stage, put someone through to the next stage, put someone through to the next stage. And the only way to do that reliably is by turning this all into one big system of systems of systems of systems. So in using high-level workflows or in using Zaps or in using scripts, you want to set these up in such a way that there is nothing that needs to be done other than following this process. You want there to be zero brain power required in order to perform these things. Now, brain power is where we have the other type of systems, which are intangible or intellectual systems, right? So, for example, in a sales conversation, you do have scripts, but you need to know when to say what, right? So these are those intangible systems that you need to install into the people who are facilitating your systems as brains. The normal way of saying that is teach your sales reps what to say when. So you can have little systems and automations and things here, but you also need to have intellectual systems to teach people how to use these systems or to fill in the gaps that these tangible systems cannot fill. So for example, a really simple intellectual system is teaching a media buyer how to write ads, right? How to write specific types of ads that you know work best, for example, in order to follow your frameworks, your methodologies for writing ads. And with time, what you want to do is build a wealth of intangible intellectual systems so that you just have proven ways to move about in your entire business so that things just become easier and nothing needs to be brought back to you. And you want these systems to be systems so that you can teach people how to use these systems as reliably as you yourself can use them. You don't want to just build up a skill kind of aimlessly and then not be able to teach it to other people. The system is what allows you to transfer the skill over to somebody else in an extremely, extremely reliable manner. So that's why I created a private scaling group for agency owners. In there, what I do is I give everybody my intellectual systems, my ways of thinking. So for example, when you're running ads, what do you do when your lead cost is over X? Or how do I know what lead cost to shoot for? I give everybody these intellectual systems so that there's no guessing, there's no guesswork. It's very simple, it's extremely straight to the point. Here's where you're at, here's where you need to go, here's what you need to do to get there, here's the bridge, right? That's really the idea with all of this. And so that's just a quick little rundown for the two main types of systems, at least the way that I look at them, the tangible systems, the automations, the Zaps, etc., and the intangible systems, again, being the intellectual systems and the ways of thinking. Bottom line, systems come first before you outsource to people. Because like I said, people are not systems. People facilitate systems, people run systems, people manage systems. So if you don't have systems for people to run or manage, it's just going to be a complete mess for you. So that's why a lot of people talk about creating SOPs and this kind of thing. Again, I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to build the systems before delegating things. This is why, I made a video in the past on when should you hire an appointment setter for your agency. And what I was saying was don't hire an appointment setter until you have a system to set appointments very reliably and hit certain metrics and KPIs, because then and only then can you really gauge if this person's doing a good job. If you've created a system for onboarding a client and it normally takes you 2.5 hours, which is where I was at in the past, when you hire somebody, you can create SOPs for them literally click by click so there's zero guesswork for them. And then from there, you can gauge, okay, well, why is it taking this guy 7 hours to do this? He must be slacking off. And then you can confront that. Maybe they have questions, maybe they have concerns, or maybe they're making excuses, and then you can get rid of that person and replace them, because in reality, it should probably only take them 3.5 hours, because in your business, odds are you're going to be doing things much faster and much more diligently than anybody you hire. That's not always the case, but especially when you're hiring people at low dollar per hour, that's really, really going to be the case. But again, what I'm saying is you can't know how your people are performing if you don't have a baseline for how they should be performing. And the way to have a baseline for how they should be performing is to have a reliable system where you onboard a client within 2.5 hours, every single little set of events happens, a bunch of little systems are played out within that 2.5 hour period. And then okay, here's everything that needs to be done. You can check over their work. You can see how long it took, et cetera, et cetera. Off the bat, people aren't really going to necessarily, they might take 5 hours to do something that would take you 2.5. So give them a few attempts before being like, okay, why is this taking so long? But this is how I took all of this red off of my calendar, right? The red was all this client stuff, and a lot of the blue down here in the evenings, creating, managing client accounts and this and that. Systems are how I was able to delegate these things, even to, low dollar per hour VA. And when I had done, a 77K in a 30-day period, it was myself and a part-time VA, and that's where I was getting killed. But when I brought an operations guy on full-time, when I brought an appointment setter on, et cetera, so much work got taken off of my plate. Then it was just sales calls I had to worry about. And then later on, I got a sales rep, and that was all, problem solved, basically. But I just, systems are so important for hiring people and bringing people on board. Now, so what you want to do is you want to calculate, when it comes to service delivery, how long it takes you lifetime to manage a single client on average, right? You can come up with a rough estimate. And it's going to be more when you're newer, because you're in the ad accounts more, you're worried about this, you're worried about that, you're not sure, you've never been in this situation, you've never been in that situation, so you're navigating a lot of new situations, so things just take longer when you're newer. But what I had found is that it would take us about 7.5 hours to fulfill a client throughout their lifetime of being with us. Now from here, I broke down that 7.5 hours into like how long does it really take, and this is also not even at full efficiency, but we found that customer support and like replying to emails, so on and so forth, would take about 2 hours over the lifespan of a client. Client launches would take about 2.5 hours. Ads maintenance would take about 2.5 hours. And then ad creation would take about half an hour per client over their lifetime. So from here, what we want to do is look at the first hire and the second hire. Who can we outsource this stuff to? And when should we do it? And in what sequence should we do it? Who should be the first hire? And who should be the second hire? Now, if you remember from before, what I mentioned is that I hired an admin VA in order to just save me a bunch of time on client launches, because the launches were taking a long time. The red in that calendar there was just me taking launch calls, right? Because I still wanted to be client facing at that point in time, because with my VA, I wasn't really comfortable with my VA being client facing. So I was doing the ad maintenance. Of course, I was doing the customer support, and I was doing the client launches. In the beginning, the client launches were killing me. So I was like, okay, what we can do is just hire an admin VA to help me with the client launches. You can also have an admin VA help you with customer support, provided you have a system for that again already. So for your first hire, that's what I would recommend, because you can hire a part-time VA and have them save you 5 hours a week for like, $100 a month, right? I made another video on this. I'm not going to go in depth on that, but that's the one on time audits. It's called Do This in Your SMMA right now. But that's a really nice place to start, because even if you're doing, let's say, $3,000 a month in revenue, it's like, well, if you could save 20 hours a month, you can hire that person for $100 a month out of your 3K. That's really not a lot of money. It's 3.3% of your total monthly revenue, but you can save yourself 20 hours a month to increase your outreach, increase your calls, increase your sales, and obviously improve your service as well. But within the service delivery pie chart, this is what I've found. So the first thing I did was I outsourced client launches. I found issues with this VA. He wasn't very good, so on and so forth. I wanted to bring on a North American-based full-time person in order to help me with all of these things and be able to outsource this stuff, because I had created over the couple years before, I had created an entire ads maintenance system. So once X dollars have been spent on an ad, turn it off. If X dollars have been spent and we've had only one click, turn it off, right? If we're running under X ads at the same time, turn a new one on and start testing, right? If we're in this situation, do this. If we're in that situation, do that. And I was building this entire system to the point of, this is where we can talk about how I really, really automated this thing. But with the ad maintenance, I got it to a point where if somebody had never run ads in their life, all they would have to do is read this chart that I had, and they would know exactly when to turn on and off all client ads. So then I also, with the goal of this second hire, was to replace the first hire being the part-time VA, be full-time, do the client launches, do the ads maintenance, and do the customer support, and take the launch calls. That's part of the launches. I guess the launches here are they're actually 3.5 hours now that I think about it, because the launch call would be about an hour, and then there'd be 2.5 hours of setup. So when I brought this person on, that was easily handed off and dealt with. I made an entire launch call process. If this goes wrong, click here, do this, do that. Here's a little 35-second loom for if you run into this situation. Then once you're done this, move on to this one. If you have any issues with this, then click and watch this 40-second loom, and that'll help you solve that problem. And then we'd also obviously have calls for the first few weeks every day, just to so I could teach him everything. But then from there, what happens is, okay, client launches are fully done and dealt with. I don't have to take launch calls anymore. The way that I handed those off was like we would hop on a launch call, or we would hop on a call together. He would first shadow like 2 or 3 launch calls. Then he would take the first part of the launch call with me on the call. Then he'd take the second part with me on the call. Then he'd do an entire launch call with me just shadowing him and making sure everything's okay with him. Then I sent him off on his own, right? With obviously the script and everything. But in having a system for that, it's really easy to do the handoff and never have to touch it again, as opposed to having this person come back and say, oh, I couldn't figure this out on the call, and then now the client's pissed off because I didn't know what I was doing, and they think we're unprofessional, and like this person just signed on and now they're getting buyer's remorse and they don't trust you because you didn't have a system to train somebody on for this. So that's again why systems are so important. But once I had done this, from the ad maintenance side of things, it's really just like my guy's, his name's Nick. Like Nick just reads the chart. If the chart says to turn ads on, he's going to turn ads on. If the chart says to turn ads off, he's going to turn ads off. He learned media buying through what looks like code. Like, so the guys on the inside of my group will know what I'm talking about, but like, it's like I basically wrote code that just says if this, and if this, and if this, then turn ad off. Else, keep ad on. Like, that's basically what it is. If you're interested in joining that private scaling group, by the way, there's a link in the description. You can learn a little more about that or book a call with me. But in doing this, again, it just makes everything foolproof. Reliable inputs, reliable outputs. We want to minimize the need for creativity in the process when systemizing and scaling a business. And the same goes for customer support. I gave him a customer support system. Is somebody upset? If so, say this, then do this, and then say that you've done this, for example. Right? And there's so many different little systems, but again, what we want to do is look at, okay, here's the breakdown, right? That's why we want to make this the first hire, because it was really 3.5 hours per client that I signed. I had kept the 0.5 hours per client lifetime as my own task the whole way through. I still write the ads to this day, but I write ads every at this point, it's a lot less than half an hour, to be honest. But at this point, I probably write an ad every 1 to 2 months. And it takes me 15 to 45 minutes to write one ad, or maybe I'll write 3. So it's extremely low maintenance. That's something I'm more than happy doing. If I wanted, I could hire a copywriter to do it for me, but it's just so easy that I don't need to. So that's really again, what I've done to just take a whole bunch of stuff off my calendar, at least from a service delivery standpoint. Like I said, I'd hire appointment setters and all this kind of thing, but Nick is an absolute G. Love him. Still works with me to this day. He's been working with me a little over a year now. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If you enjoyed this video, go to my channel, watch whatever else is there. Otherwise, click whatever video is popping up on screen for you now, and I'll see you there.